Thanks, Matt.
No problem. All right, so as Randy said, my name is Matt Noble. I am with Palm Beach County Emergency Management. So I work at the EOC, the Emergency Operations Center. I'm the planning manager there, oversee a bunch of different programs and everything, but this is one of the many things that we do, is outreach. So does anyone know what emergency management is? Yes, ma'am.
I know, I work for the district.
All right, well, that's cheating. So, and don't say managing emergencies, right? I mean, that's kind of it, but no, all right, fair enough. So that's our fault, right? We're working on our public image. I guess I hate saying this because people usually want to throw tomatoes at me, but we're kind of like FEMA, just the local version. All right, so our goal essentially is to help you recover from, prepare for, respond to, recover from the effects of any kind of hazards that affect our communities. In my instance, since I work for the county. All right, so how we do that is we kind of coordinate with everyone. Those cops, the firefighters, public works, local, private sector, the businesses. We coordinate with all of them. We're kind of in the middle of all of those people, all right? And we essentially kind of act as a belly button or a focal point. All right, so whenever anything happens, we all get together in this room called the operations room, which is in the EOC. All right, so does anyone pass over military going down Southern? You hit the overpass, there's the military right there, right? Going over military, Haverhill, all that. And there's this huge radio tower, right? This big antenna. People probably don't know what I'm talking about. But next time you're driving over Southern and you're getting your military, you're going to look and you're going to see that antenna because I talked to you about it, right? So that antenna, there's this big building there. That's the EOC. Inside that room or inside that building is the operations room, all right? And it's essentially kind of like a Roman Colosseum style setup. There's a bunch of little half circles and there's chairs, all right? And in these chairs, there's like 100 chairs. And that's where everyone goes during an emergency. So, I'll use a hurricane for this example, but we deal with more than just hurricanes, all right? But so we'll have all these different representatives there, and they're getting all this information from the field, and they're feeding it into EOC, and we're reporting that up to the state and even, the federal level, and then we're taking the information that we're getting and we're pushing it back out to those responders, all right? And it's not just information, we push equipment and resources out to those people too. So for example, if there's a huge flood here, I'll just say Grandview Circle, right? And there's a bunch of homes that are flooded, and we're getting these calls from the firefighters, and they're like, it's just too much for us, we need more help. We make phone calls, essentially, and we get more help out here, all right? Or, if they need, whatever the case may be, power's out, they need lights out here, generators, we kind of coordinate all of that, all right? So, we know hurricanes are one of the hazards here. Anybody know what any of the other hazards are that affect Palm Beach County? Flooding? All right, yeah, that's a good one.
Drought.
Yep, flooding is number one killer, natural hazard related, all right, in the U.S. Kills more people. It's not lightning or tornadoes or anything like that. Drought, kind of. What else?
The occasional tornado.
The occasional tornadoes, right? Those are usually due to hurricanes in most instances. Anything else? Drought is kind of related to one, right? Fire. That's what comes with droughts. We've got a bunch of different other ones, and you can't really see it on my little PowerPoint here, but there's a couple different circles. There's 12 total, all right? So you've got your natural hazards, you've got your man-made hazards, or your human-caused hazards, active shooters, workplace violence. I'll tell you, and I'm not really a pessimist, but it's probably just a matter of time before we get one of those here in Palm Beach County. Anybody remember Pulse nightclub shooting, Orlando? Yeah, they were scoping out Clematis for that at first, but it wasn't busy enough. So he went up to Orlando. And some of your technological hazards, those usually aren't as big a deal, but like natural gas line leaks. I mean, we've got I-95, Turnpike, a lot of hazardous material. This is the part where I try to help you sleep better at night, okay, and just tell you everything that could go wrong. But so there's a lot of hazardous material that travels, on those corridors occasionally. Semi-truck gets into a crash and leaks a bunch of methyl ethyl death out. Lights on fire. Next thing you know, you've got a plume of toxic death floating your way. So pretty rare though, but it does happen. I've literally seen it with my own eyes before. But getting back to hurricanes, couple things about hurricanes. You've got watches, you've got warnings, okay? So a watch, I mean, and I'm sorry, you probably know some of this stuff I'm saying, so just, indulge me if you will. But a watch is probably going to happen, probably going to hit your area within 48 hours. A warning is that part of the cone, that little cone you see on the news, right? some part of that cone is going to hit your area in 36 hours. All right, so kind of the difference there. So now that I've talked about everything, that can go wrong here, I have to talk about what you can do, right? Kind of get ready for that. You can make a plan, right? That's the first step. You got to build the kit for that plan. You can be informed, and you can get involved, which is actually something you're doing right now by being a part of your neighborhood watch program. So kudos. So we're talking about making a plan, right? I mean, that's kind of the first step of any process. Big thing is knowing where you're at, what your flood zone is, what your evacuation zone is. How many people were here during Irma? Okay. How many of you evacuated? All right. I'm not being like kind of condescending when I say this, but did you live in Belle Glade? All right, so you weren't ordered to evacuate. You chose to evacuate, which, hey, look, teach their own. Sometimes that's the best thing to do, right? You do what you think is best. But I'm going to talk about that a little bit because we've got these evacuation zones. They're kind of hard to understand as they are right now. We're working on making them a little bit more kind of user-friendly. Instead of saying Zone D, which encompasses all this area, we're going to say, like, hey, east of Haverhill, between Haverhill and the Turnpike, if you live here, evacuate, okay? Where you can find this information as far as your flood zone and your hurricane zone is on readypvc.com. And I've got a bunch of little handouts up here, and highly recommend you take some of these. And it's got the website listed on there. But it's real simple, readypvc.com. All right, on there's this Know Your Zone tool. You simply go, you type your address in, and it'll tell you if you're in an evacuation zone. All right, if you're in a flood zone, and people always say, well, do I really need like flood insurance? And it says I'm not in a flood zone. If you live in South Florida, you're in a flood zone. Okay, just plan on that. Get yourself some flood insurance. Play it safe, all right? Because I'm kind of sidebarring here, but the floods aren't always caused by rising water, right? If a hurricane comes and rips your roof off, and then it floods on the inside, sometimes the insurance companies like to say that's a flood when it's like, well, it was actually kind of a hurricane when you think about it, but chicken or the egg, right? So go to readypvc.com. It'll talk about that. It seems like, I grew up around here, like in the acreage and stuff. I used to always come to Counterpoint. But I know a lot of these houses are, like 70s or 80s or so. So, nothing's really considered substandard housing, right? Because that's the big thing. Is like evacuation zone A is if you live in like a mobile home or a manufactured home. They're one and the same. Or like a trailer or something along those lines. Or if you live in substandard housing, which is where the city has come and said, like, hey, your house is just not up to par. All right, so does anybody live in like a really old house? All right, good. Still doesn't hurt to go check that out and type your address in. There's a bunch of different things on this website, and one of those is you can actually, it'll tell you, like that information that we get in the operations room. We get things like grocery stores, which grocery stores are open, which gas stations are closed, right? We put all of that information on that website. So that's part of your plan, all right, is knowing where you're going to go, what you're going to do. You also got to take some other things into consideration. Like if you are going to evacuate, how are you going to do that? Are you going to drive? Are you just evacuating your home and going to a friend's home that has like a brand new home or whatever, and they've got a safe room and a panic room and all those things that I dream of, right? Try to keep it a little loose. I know it's hot out. So that's one thing to consider. Are you going to go to a shelter instead? All right. Did anyone go to a shelter? Has anyone ever been to one of the shelters in Palm Beach County? They kind of get a bad rap, but oh, did you?
Long time ago, I staffed one.
All right.
One thing you can definitely know, it's crowded. It's not like there's tons of free food for everybody and everything you need is there. If you have to go, you have to bring your own materials, bring your own pillows, blankets, food, water.
Yep.
Don't expect to be weighted on.
20 square feet, that's what you get, all right? 20 square feet is your little area. Doesn't include a bed. If you're to think of shelters as a boat, you're going to think of it as a life raft, all right? It's not a Carnival cruise, all right? But here's the thing. If a Category 5 hurricane is coming my way and I live in a house that was built in 1980, I'm going to a shelter. So that's just the end of that. I'd rather deal with a couple of days of, not ideal living conditions than risk riding it out in a wood frame house or, just something that's older than a decade. Even if I lived in a brand new house, I probably wouldn't risk it. I'd probably just go to a shelter. So, but that's just my take, We do have a couple of different options for shelters, right? We have pet-friendly shelters. There's like one or two of those. So you have to pre-register for that though. So if you've got Mr. Fluffy and everything, and you just don't want to leave him behind, but you don't want to ride it out in your house, pre-register for a special needs shelter. You can also find that information on our website or on Animal Care and Control. They deal with that as well. I mean, they're the ones that kind of run it. But we also have special needs shelters. I've got a couple handouts up here, and I'll just kind of show these to you. I'll leave them here. You can grab them afterwards. But this one just kind of talks about our general population risk shelters. All right, and these are special needs shelters. Does anyone have any family or friends that are special needs? And when I say special needs, what I mean is like they have a medical condition that requires pretty much constant care. Like either they're on an oxygen tank or like a nebulizer or anything. All right. Well, if you do, there's information up here that you can get to them. So I talked about the pet-friendly shelters. Let's see what else here. Again, you have to pre-register for those, the special needs as well. As far as furthermore making a plan is talking about how you're going to stay in touch. I believe it was called Zello, with like all the craze, Zello and WhatsApp, right, during Hurricane Irma. They're like, oh, you can use this thing. And it just magically texts people, right? You still need Wi-Fi for that. So in order to get Wi-Fi, you need power. And even if you do have both of those and the towers are down, then I mean, let's be honest. How many times has our Comcast or AT&T gone out when it's just like a strong breeze, right? So wouldn't really count on things like that necessarily. What's good is, I mean, you can go to like BJ's or Costco and just get some cheap two-way radios. I mean, they're good for up to like a mile or two. So I always recommend people do that. Also, just getting like a little hand crank emergency radio is a good way to kind of just at least know what's going on. A lot of them are like Swiss Army knives of radios now. They come with like flashlights and coffee makers and everything on them, and you just crank them up. You don't have to worry about batteries or anything like that. I mean, taking that a step further too, you could also think about just rally points. Like, hey, if it's after the storm, we haven't heard from each other. None of our 15 different communication methods have worked, including carrier pigeon. We're going to meet up at the playground or whatever once it's safe. All right. So just recommend. I mean, redundancy is key with any kind of disaster situation. So I've got these cool pictures of Monroe County. Not really cool considering it's all basically like death and destruction, but this was right after Hurricane Irma. And I usually like to show these to people, and they aren't like the ones that like the news had and everything. Our director went down because they needed help, so he went down, helped them out with their emergency operations, and snapped some of these pictures and brought them back. But it's just kind of good to look at it occasionally because we get what's called hurricane amnesia here. I mean, everyone like, Irma was supposed to be the biggest and baddest thing ever, right? And then it barely touched us. Well, we got lucky. We got really lucky. I mean, they didn't get lucky down there, and we got lucky that it turned last minute. It was Category 1 winds at the most, and that wasn't even sustained winds. That was like we got the occasional gust of Category 1 winds here in Palm Beach County. So, I mean, I'm sure a lot of you are locals, have been here for a long time, so you've probably encountered far worse hurricanes than I'm preaching to the choir. But it's just something to keep in mind, all right? I always tell everyone just plan for a Category 5 every hurricane season. You can't go wrong there, all right? Building the kit, long story short, pretend like you're going camping for a week, right? And this kit doesn't necessarily apply to like if you're going to a shelter. I mean, it's good for like your home too, so just plan on going camping for a week. Rule of thumb for water, can anyone tell me what you're supposed to plan for as far as water?
A gallon a day per person.
Bam, nice. Gallon a day per person for at least 3 to 5 days. If you're like me and just chug it all the time, I usually double that. So, but I mean, along with that, just your typical emergency essentials. Important documents are good to keep as well. Put them in like a waterproof baggie or just anything along those lines. Just things that I don't feel like going to the Social Security office after a hurricane just because I didn't take the time to stick my Social Security card in a plastic bag, just simple things like that. And like special items too. So you may not necessarily be special needs, but like if you have an inhaler or something like that, you might just want to stock up, get a little bit extra of that. Most insurances, whenever I talk about getting extra medication, I get like bombarded and people try to throw stuff at me. Well, my insurance company, blah, blah, and I get it. I've got insurance or whatever. I deal with the same stuff, and they don't want to give you extra medication sometimes. But if you call them up, you talk to them, you can usually kind of get it to where something is worked out and just kind of explain that to them because you don't want to have to like, all right, hurricane's supposed to be here in a week. my prescription runs out in 3 days and I gotta, do the automatic renewal thing. Nobody wants to deal with that right beforehand. So, board games, just things that kind of keep you occupied when the power goes out, because it probably will go out. So just talk a little bit about flooding. I mean, what's it like here? Does it flood easily? I mean, your storms? Okay, so good. All right, good. The thing is, though, is if you're out traveling around right afterwards, which people tend to do, just be careful, all right? I mean, if there's a large body of water, or, if the storm drains get clogged, I mean, you may have really good drainage, but they get clogged during the storm, so that can block them up. Don't go out there, try to unclog them or anything crazy like that. I mean, it only takes 6 inches to knock a person down and a foot to move a car. So the rule of thumb is turn around, don't drown, because it's just really not worth it, and you're not supposed to go into floodwaters. But I have to say that every time, because every time there's a flood, some idiot does it and drowns. All right? Play it safe, just wait it out. If something does happen for whatever reason, I mean, there is flash flooding, and I mean, they call it flash flooding because it happens almost instantly. But just try to get to higher ground, obviously. If you're in your car, don't just try to, hop out and run away or anything like that. So being informed, right? We've got a couple of different apps, and again, some of them are on the handouts here. But we've got one called PVC Dart, all right, and it's damage assessment reporting tool. Sorry, that one escapes me sometimes. It's actually pretty cool, all right? So, I mean, who doesn't have a smartphone? Cool. So if you got a smartphone, you can go to the App Store, Google Play, whatever that or the Apple one is or whatever, and just download it. You just type in PVC Dart. And what this does, all right, and this kind of is right up your alley, being neighborhood watch, is it allows you to report damage. All right, and not just report damage, but see other damage that has been reported. So, if you see a down power line, you take a picture of that. It goes into the magical system, and we also use that information to populate our, big overlay map or whatever. And what this does is it helps responders, because there's not always going to be a cop on every street or a firefighter, and they're not going to know this stuff right away. So if you take a picture of it, you could potentially save a life. So someone that's going out to check their mail or something, and they check their app first and they see there's a down power line. So it's just a good little tool to have. During a storm, there's also, or any major event, okay, we activate what's called the Emergency Information Center, the EIC. It was activated during Irma, the storm before that. And essentially what it is it's just a big telephone bank that trained operators go in and they, answer calls, okay? It's not like 911 or anything like that. It's, hey, where's the nearest shelter at? Hey, I need to get food at which grocery store. Here's where I live. Which grocery stores are open? Things along those lines. It's still really good information to have. Or like, hey, this person's missing. I'm trying to stay focused. So you can call and they can pretty much, they're getting that information from us. So it's almost like a direct line to the EOC. All right. We've also got social media. PVC, DEM, Palm Beach County Division of Emergency Management. We're on Facebook, we're on Twitter, we're pretty active. And honestly, I hate to say it, but that's where some of the most up-to-date, quickest information comes from is the social media. Because when another counterpart that's in that EOC with us is the DISC is what we call them. They're manned by public information officers, and they go and they specifically hunt down rumors. So they'll be like, oh, this bridge collapsed or whatever, and it's all over social media. And then they go and they debunk it. And they're like, the bridge didn't collapse, it's fine. So again, straight from the horse's mouth there. We also have this thing called Alert PVC. Is anyone signed up for Alert PVC? It's all right. So nobody knows what it is, pretty much, which is cool because I love talking about it. Does anyone have a simple weather alert type of thing on their phone? All right, so it's kind of like that. All right, this is it. Grab one of these once you're done, please. What it is, though, is, again, it's straight from the horse's mouth. This is information that we're supplying, all right? So, and it's not really even an app necessarily. You go on, you sign up, and you can choose to be notified via email, phone call, or text messaging, or all three at the same time. I usually don't recommend that one, though. And what it does is it notifies you of, municipal alerts, such as, if there's a domestic security type of event, that'll get pushed out. Same thing, all of your weather type warnings, okay? A good example that I like to use is I was going to go to this CVS that I always go to right near my house one day. 10 minutes before I went to go leave the house, I got a text message. I'm like, oh, what's this? Oh, gas leak at CVS. Oh, it's my CVS. The building's been evacuated. I guess I won't go there, right? So if anything, it's just kind of convenient. And you can also choose like what you get notified of, so it won't bombard your phone or anything like that. Really simple process, really recommend it. And the thing that it has an edge on those other kind of apps or whatever is that it doesn't have to go through that like third party or whatever, where they're micro mining and selling your data and all that stuff, and then they decide to notify you. It's just us. We pump it out in the system, and then it goes out. So one, it's not delayed, and it's less kind of invasive. As far as the getting involved, if the neighborhood watch isn't enough, there's plenty of other programs out there. AmeriCorps, like the Medical Reserve type corps, through Red Cross. We've also got the Community Emergency Response Team. I don't think Counterpoint has one of those, but might not be a bad idea. So, like, after the storm, do you guys do anything? I mean, aside from your typical neighborhood watch like duties, do you go patrol or walk around or anything, or make sure people are good, or is it just kind of a see something, say something?
I know. It's passive.
Passive, okay. Yeah, this one's a little bit more offensive, I guess. We train, just your typical everyday citizen or whatever to kind of do almost first responder type of work, but there's just a little bit of an advanced level of training. Some first aid type skills, search and rescue type skills. So, and they form these teams, they communicate, and a lot of them like ham radio operators too. And does anyone know where Indian Spring is? I think it's in like not Jupiter. It's down in like Boynton, I think. But anyways, their search team's pretty robust. And during Irma, there was all their phone lines and everything were down. There was an elderly lady who broke her arm, and they couldn't call for an ambulance, so their ham radio operator called our ham radio operator in the EOC, and we got an ambulance within 10 minutes. So, let's see, what else here? I already talked to you to death about the whole signing up for Alert PBC. I'm glad you know what emergency management does now. And that's pretty much all I have. I've got some cool magnets up here, too. So, who doesn't like refrigerator magnets, right? Does anybody have any questions for me? All right. Well, thanks.
Thank you.
I'll leave this here.
All right, so